Hello, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I like to welcome you to the discussion today that we are having on Russian invasion of Ukraine. Our special guest today on tonight's discussion is Dr. Sunday Adelaja. Dr. Sunday Adelaja pastors one of the largest church congregation in Europe, Ukraine to be specific, and is a public figure in that country, and he has made immense contribution to the country Ukraine. And as a young Nigerian who went abroad to study in Eastern Europe, Dr. Sunday Adelaja had an humble beginning, and he, by the grace, special grace of God, he was able to rise to become a public figure in this country, and he has done so much to the progress and development of modern day Ukraine, and is a well-known public figure not just in Ukraine but all around the world. So today we are really excited to have him in our show to look at what is actually happening in Ukraine and the Russian invasion and the destruction that is raging on in Ukraine today. It's not a good experience to have war in your country, and millions of Ukrainians are displaced as we speak. People who used to have a beautiful country are now displaced and dispersed in different neighboring countries in Eastern Europe. And the war is still raging on despite uh, the talk for peace, for ceasefire, and for an end to it. Despite also the sanctions from uh, different countries on Russia for invading a sovereign nation, the Russian forces seem to still persist. So today we want to know what actually led to this war and how we can find a lasting solution to it. So my co-anchor on this show today is Oluwaseun Wikiman, and Mr. Wikiman, you are welcome as well. And also
Thank you
Dr.
very much.
Sunday Adelaja, we are glad to have you. He will be joining us in 10 minutes past 7 Nigerian time. And also our guest today, we are happy you are joining us. You can see different people from different parts of the world who are hooked up to this show. You are welcome. You know, there's so much stories about what led to this war. Some people have said that it is because Ukraine wanted to join NATO, and some have said that the Russian oppression of Ukraine has gotten to a point where Ukraine or the government of Ukraine couldn't take it anymore. And then on the part of the Russians, the there's an allegation that Ukraine is not respecting the decision of two regions in their country for secession. So there are so many stories that are everywhere on the social media about why this war came to be. So I believe with our guest, who is a public figure in Ukraine and who has made immense contribution to modern day Ukraine, in the person of Dr. Sunday Adelaja, I believe will be able to give us a clue as to what is happening in Ukraine. So over to you, Wikiman.
Yes, thank you very much, Pastor Martins. This idea was a very beautiful idea from you. And since you told me about it, I was like, it's just very, very timely. And we also appreciate our guest speaker, Dr. Sunday Adelaja, who we all know is a very busy man and also very committed to such appointments when he has the opportunity to appear. And Under normal circumstances, I don't know how we would have been able to get him on this show, but this topic is very important. For those of you listening to us, we are concerned about, of course, we are concerned about the man of God, we are concerned about his family, we are also concerned about Ukraine. And as believers, so if you are joining this discussion, join with the understanding that as believers, we are concerned about the church in Ukraine. Now, this is not the first time we are having a discussion about churches in troubled area, where we had so many challenges in northern Nigeria, in even the south, anywhere there is challenge. Of course, number one, we are concerned about humanity as a whole, irrespective of religion, whether you're a Christian, whether you're a Muslim, as long as you're a human being, we show a lot of concern. But also as believers, we are also enjoined to also show a lot of concern, So what is happening in Ukraine is very disheartening, but we don't want to just rely on just what we hear on CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, and the mainstream media. Uh, we are going to have Dr. Adelaja, who is a public figure, and who is going to be giving us some very deep insights on what is happening. And like you see how we titled the meeting, we said Ukraine, the church, and the future. So we are also going to be taking questions. If you drop your questions in the comments, I'm moderating. So me and Mr. Martins at the back end will review the questions and then we'll ask your question. All right, thank you very much. So we are still waiting for Dr. Sunday, but before let me hand over to Mr. Martins.
Sorry to cut you, Wiki Man.
Yes,
just before Dr. Sunday Adelaja comes up, there's been this suspicion about the Western media like BBC and the CNN. There's been this suspicion that they've been very sentimental in their reportage just because maybe their countries or their government is not in support of Russian invasion. So most of them think, or most of the reportage has been in such a way that people think that they are reporting based on sentiment. And sometimes you hear stories about how the Russian forces are being withstood by the Ukrainian forces. And then again, when you look at what is happening in the news or from other stories, you see that major historical structures and the buildings in Ukraine are being brought down. And then you are wondering if really the Ukrainian forces are really strong enough to withstand the Russian troops. So there is so much distrust when it comes to reportage of the media, and because there's stories about restrictions on the Russian government on social media or on Facebook or Twitter, we can't really get to know what it is from their own end. So there's so much we are going to be looking at today, not just because we want people to be informed about the development from both sides. We want to see how we can have a conversation that could lead to cessation of the war so that peace can return to Ukraine, and so that also Ukrainians can return back to their country, because so many people, millions of people, are currently displaced in Europe because of this fighting. And it's not a good sight when you look at places in Ukraine that have been brought down. Even civilian residents have been attacked, structures brought down, and lives have been lost as well, both from Russian side and the Ukrainian side. So it's something we want peace, because the whole agenda of God's kingdom is to promote and enhance peace in human society, because war can never work out the will of God for our world today. So we are glad to have Dr. Sunday Adelaja on the show. And today, Dr. Sunday Adelaja is a public figure in Ukraine and he pastors the embassy of the Blessed Kingdom of God in Kiev, Ukraine. And Dr. Sunday Adelaja is one of the most decorated minister of African descent. You know, Ukraine is his adopted country, even though he's originally from Nigeria. And I think he has spent the most of his life in Ukraine, and everything about him is Ukraine. And he has made immense contribution in the nation of Ukraine. And the Embassy of God is the largest church congregation in Europe. And Dr. Sunday Adelaja is one minister. You know, when you look at ministers from Africa that are in other parts of the world, you find out that most of the people that attend their churches are actually Africans. Like if you look at the Nigerian pastor who is in Europe, in London or America, you find out that most of the people there are actually Nigerian based. Dr. Sunday Adelaja is one minister that pastors in Europe, and almost 98% of his church members are white, are people of different country and his home country, the home-based country. So Dr. Sonia Adelaja has actually made immense impact in Ukraine, and today he's a public figure in that country, and I believe he'll be able to share enough light on what is happening in Ukraine. So over to you, Wikiman. Wikiman is my co-anchor today, and I believe we have so much to talk about.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sunday. I can say it's a very, very great honor to be on this platform with you. I personally have known Dr. Sunday Adelaja, I think probably when I was, she was 15, 20 years ago. My mom always talks about him. I was a very little boy, like, there's this man of God from Ukraine. From Ukraine. And then my mom will always talk. I think when you came to Nigeria, 1999 or something, that was the first time I was able to see you. It's a very great privilege. So before we go ahead, we will first read a short. I remember one day I was watching Dr. Sunday's program, and somebody said, "Who is?" I mean, I don't know Dr. Sunday Adelaja. Dr. Sunday said, "You don't know me," and that's where I knew that he had the whole biography of his life. In fact, Dr. Sunday gave him like a 25-minute lecture. Said, "Do you know when I spoke at this parliament? I was the first person." I said, "Man, this is a real kingdom man. It's a very great honor to have you here, so I welcome." Okay, let me quickly read this short citation. Then we will go straight into discussion because we have quite a number of people online. This is very, very encouraging. Waiting to hear him. Okay, Dr. Adelaja is the founder and senior pastor of the Embassy of the Blessed Kingdom of God for All Nations Church, Kiev, Ukraine. The church is the largest church in Europe with over 25,000 members in Kiev, 100,000 members in Ukraine, and 1,000 churches spread across the world. The church feeds thousands of people daily through its soup kitchen in Kiev and operates a program that helps homeless people acquire skills to reintegrate them into the society. Through the Church Love Rehabilitation Center, more than 5,000 drug and alcohol addicts have been set free and rehabilitated. Dr. Adelaja is arguably the most decorated and honored cleric from Africa today. He was honored to speak twice at the United Nations in 2007. He has been honored to open the United States Senate in prayer. He became an honorary member of the Eurasian International Chamber of Commerce. In 2010, he became the face of Kiev, beating the most popular actor in the country, the heavyweight boxing champion of the world who hails from the city and the mayor of the city. In 2004, he and his church were involved in the Orange Revolution of Ukraine, that uprooted corruption from the body politic of Ukraine and liberated the country from the apron strings of Russia. Dr. Sunday has authored dozens of books, many of them bestsellers. He is a motivational speaker and a social activist. He's married, so we add that one to a very beautiful woman with very beautiful children. Dr. Sunday Adelaja is the leading voice changing the world through mental revolution, liberating humanity from the shackles of ignorance. Sir, you are welcome, and we are happy to have you here. You are welcome.
All right, you're welcome, sir.
Okay.
Now,
Thank you so very much. I noticed that the microphone of Wikiman is echoing,
Exactly. Okay.
but that of Martin is good. And my
We've been
own is
trying to
echoing
solve this
too.
problem. I don't know what will be the issue.
Maybe what should happen is when one person is talking, maybe all of us should mute it. Maybe it will be
okay.
better that way.
Okay, can you try it and let's see what will happen? This is the first time I'm experiencing this. What could be the problem? Okay, anyway.
Let Martin, you can mute your own. I will mute my own. Let Wikiman speak. I will see.
Okay. Okay, hello. Can you hear me? All right. Thank you. Mr. Martins, I told you the echo was coming from there. Okay, sir. So the first question we have for you, so that you can take over the conversation, the first question we have, because we are in Nigeria, and a lot of things we read is from CNN, Al Jazeera, BBC, and if you know the characteristics of some of these mainstream media, for example, when you go to Al Jazeera, you know the kind of narrative they are pushing. Well, I don't want to go into all this here. You know. If you go to CNN, they have their own kind of. So, sir, you are on ground. Please kindly tell us exactly what is going on. What is the cause of this? Let us hear from you. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you so very, very much, Wikiman. Thank you so much, Martin. When somebody sent me the article that Mr. Martin wrote, I was so surprised that, oh, who is this that has done such a good quality study about who DSA is? And normally, our people are not so deep to do their research sometimes. But I'm so happy that we have new generation of journalists and Christians and researchers and educationists like Martin that are able to do their own work very well and be able to come with decent materials like the article that he wrote. And I was very impressed by him. In fact, when I got his invitation to appear on this program, I didn't know he was the one who wrote the article. It was later on I realized that. And I want to welcome everybody for coming, and thank you for talking about this issue that is taking over the world. Now, so where is the truth about this whole thing? You see, it is very easy to think if you are the type that watches just Western media to judge the event that is going on, it's easy to come to two conclusions. Putin is power driven, power drunk, or he's just a madman that wants to destabilize the world. But it's not that easy. I am a person that has suffered greatly from this man and from this war. First of all, I've been in opposition, head-on opposition with Putin for close to 20 years. Putin knows who I am. Putin declared me a persona non grata to Russia since 2006. They make programs about me, about my person on their television. People who come from former Soviet Union know what I'm talking about. No dispute about this at all. That I've been a personal enemy of Vladimir Putin. But despite that, I would not be foolish enough to say that he's just a crazy man or a power-hungry man that wants to take over the world. No. That man is one of the smartest and most logical human beings you ever met. Very smart, and one of the strongest leaders the world has ever seen. That man there. So he's not just a crazy man. If we are going to treat him like a crazy man and are just going to say, okay, just crazy, we are going to be playing with like with a kid's glove, with something that we are supposed to handle with more responsibility. The man is not stupid and he knows what he's doing. Now, the other problem is that when you watch Western media, you have the impression that you are only getting one side of the story. It's just one-sided story. And this one-side story is Putin is bad and he just wants to go take over another country, and that's it. But you don't, but I understand when I speak Russian, so I understand Putin. I understand him when he's speaking without translation, no interpretation. I'm hearing him direct, just like you are hearing me in English direct now. And I'm hearing his logics and what makes him to do what he's doing and his arguments. So, but because if someone is crazy, like people make us to think, how come Russia, a big country of almost 200 million people, 70% of them are supporting him? So it means that there is something that we don't know. There is something that they're not telling us. There is something that is hidden. There is something that is going that some people could see eye to eye with Putin, but most of the world cannot see. And another problem is that when I look at the Western media, I see the way they glorify Ukraine. I see the glorification of Ukraine, which is good on one hand. I am Ukraine. I see myself as Ukrainian. It's my adopted land. And this man came to invade our country. So, but instead of just being angry and just being agitated, but I need to put aside emotions and be cool-minded and really don't let the pain of the tears of my pain block my eyes. There is a scripture that says, somewhere in the Bible when David was supposed to go and reclaim fight with the land of Ziklag. And the lesson from that story is that don't let your pain blind, don't let your weeping from your pain blind your eyes. When you are weeping, don't close your eyes. When you are weeping out of pain, don't let the pain and the weeping of your pain close your eyes. So don't let it make you lose your common sense. So what I see in Western media is that, Ukraine is destroying all these weapons of Russia. Ukraine is killing their generals, it's killing their soldiers, it's taking them in captivity. And so Ukraine is winning this war. Oh, hooray, hooray. But while we are doing that, the Russian soldier is taking more territories. They are taking more territory. So we are saying we are the one winning, but our land is being devastated. You are the one winning, and now 30% of the country is already under their control, and we are winning. How can we be winning and they are not leaving, but they are increasing? They are taking more territory. So people are not telling us the real story, the real place, because this is going to hit back at Ukrainians when they realize that we say the man, we are winning, the man is losing, they are demoralized, they are about to run away, they are surrendering, and then we discover that one town has fallen, the next town has fallen, now they are about to come to the city. I live in the suburb of Kyiv. My own town has fallen to them. My own town is now being run totally by Russians. Russians have taken over Irpin. Russians have taken over Bushi. This is the place I grew, that I call my home for the past decades. They have taken over everything. They have taken over our properties, our house, our everything, and we are saying we are winning. They are demoralized, but right there, the country is being lost to them. So I know war is an act of propaganda as well, but when there is no objectivity, even in war, when there is no truth, it comes back to eat you hard when you realize that. So they have been deceiving us all this while. Recently there was a short war that happened in another one of the former Soviet Union countries. There is a country they call Azerbaijan and another country they call Armenia. So those are two neighboring countries also in the former Soviet Union. And they just had a war about 2 years ago or something like that. And there was this country, Armenia, they were doing the same thing, coming up with stories about how they are winning and beating all these Azerbaijan people. Then all of a sudden, one day, the president was made to capitulate, to sign the surrender. And the people were so angry, they couldn't believe it. But we thought we are winning. That's what we have been fed. And then why are we losing? Why did we have to capitulate? So I don't want the same thing to happen to Ukraine, but for us to really face reality of what's going on the ground. That is number two. Number three thing that I want to note is that we are standing at a place right now whereby the whole world is at risk. This war might not end in Ukraine. This war it might go to become a World War III, and this is my fear and my concern. And I pray it will never materialize. And I ask all Christians or Muslims or people of every faith to pray that this doesn't become World War III. And the reason is because Russia has warned everybody, especially the NATO countries, that if anybody will supply weaponry and aircrafts and things to the Ukrainian government, I want them to do it. But we know that if they do it and Russia attacks one of those countries, a NATO country, it will lead to a third world war that nobody will win. And with Russia having nuclear weapon, they are going to destroy the world. All of us are in for it. The whole world will be destroyed. Russia and NATO have weapons to destroy the world at least 100,000 times over. So, and what will happen is that Russia is no match to NATO. But in nuclear weapon, they are advanced. They are more ahead of NATO. So what will happen is, if in conventional weaponry and warfare, Russia is saying that they are losing to NATO, they will be forced to use the nuclear weapon. And this is a big danger. Now, that is another problem that we are having as Ukrainians, that on one hand, I personally, as somebody that has a huge investment in Ukraine and wants Ukraine to be saved and to win this war, so we now have to think: do we ask NATO to come and fight or defend Ukraine in such a way that Ukraine is saved, but then that salvation of Ukraine leads to a world war, or do we allow Ukraine alone to fight Russia, risking a loss? And if we lose like that to Russia, but there will be no world war. So it's on one hand, as Ukrainians, we want the world to come and join us and fight for us so that we don't lose. So it's either Ukraine might lose this war to a bigger force, a bigger power, or the world will come to help us, but lead to. So either we're going to, it's about, are you sacrificing your country, or we're sacrificing the whole war or the whole world because of this. So it's a very complicated time of history that we are in right now, that we all need to believe God and pray God that God should give wisdom to the leaders, and so that people will be able to take the right decision, especially politicians, that God will give a direction to NATO leaders, to Ukrainian leaders, to Russian even leadership, that we will not have a bigger crisis in our hands.
Okay,
thank you, sir.
Doctor. Thank you
I
so
will hand
much,
over
Dr.
to
Sunday Adelaja. I believe I can see from the commentaries that our audience are responding with, that people are getting enlightened as to what the real situation is, and probably what triggered the war. Now, if I may ask, is this war, is it avoidable? Could it have been avoided?
Brilliant. Only somebody will have to mute their microphone. Okay. So, yes, definitely this war is avoidable. There is no way this war should have happened. And sometimes we are very artificial. I mean, we are very surface oriented. People are very shallow. And most people just think, if you look at the Western media, you just think it's not avoidable. It's just Putin, it's just crazy, he just want to take over. But he has not been crazy. Why is he not? He has not been taking over. He has not been so crazy for the past 20 years he has been ruling. Yes, he attacked Georgia, but that Georgia, it was affirmed later on that it is Georgia themselves that started the conflict. But so in this case, is it avoidable or not? Of course it's avoidable. Let me tell you the beginning of this situation. If you go to the internet, you will see it. And I saw it with my own eyes. If you just go to the internet and search, Google is your friend. Go to Google and search for this information. the commitment of NATO to Russia not to expand eastward. Just put that statement in Google, and you will see a lot of documents that show you that when there was a man they called Mikhail Gorbachev, is the man that brought freedom to Russia and to, liberated all these 15 countries from the former Soviet Union. But he didn't just dissolve former Soviet Union. He also liberated Eastern Europe, and including Germany, and brought about the unity of Germany into one country. So one day, the president of America, they call him Ronald Reagan, stood in Berlin just by the wall that separated the two Germany, and told Mikhail Gorbachev and said, Mikhail Gorbachev, pull down this wall. Well, that is exactly what Gorbachev did. Gorbachev pulled down the wall, because they were having their own Warsaw Pact, which is a pact or an organization just like NATO of socialist countries that were ready to fight, military organization from the Russian side and from Western side, which is NATO. So he dissolved that military organization, Warsaw Treaty or Pact. And he dissolved it, and also demanded that NATO also should dissolve, because there is no more enemy to fight. Let's just build one happy world. But NATO didn't dissolve that time because they didn't commit to dissolve. Okay, but then they committed. They told Russians that they will never extend to the former territory of Russian influence, the Eastern European countries. But at that time, after the collapse of the former Soviet Union, Russia was very weak. So they didn't have any power to protest. So over the years, NATO just took advantage of that weakness of Russia and started expanding to the east, towards the border of Russia, which is like a threat to them. But because they were not powerful enough, they couldn't talk. But all of them, all their leaders have been complaining about that. You people, we dissolve our own military partnership, but you are now coming to invade our own territory closer to our border. But then when they were now about to come to Ukraine, and Ukraine was asking to go to NATO, Russia and this president, Putin, started saying, this is a red line. Don't cross the red line, because if you come to Ukraine, that is just at the backyard of Russia. I mean, there's no way Russia will not, they will not be able to protect themselves. Even if there is war, they would have destroyed Russia before they could protect themselves. That we will not allow a military alliance like NATO to weaponize Ukraine and to be there. So, and even as much as 2 months ago, Russia wrote a letter to NATO and to United States and asked that they should give them guarantee that that Russia will never be threatened, and that Ukraine will never go to NATO, and that NATO will never expand closer to Russian border. But the answer from America and from Western countries is that Ukraine is an independent country. And because it's an independent country, they should do whatever they want. So that's like saying, go to hell, Russia, do anything you want. We're going to do what we want. So, but even me, I never believed it that Russia would do what they're doing now, that they will attack Ukraine. I thought, no, they would do something, but to think of attacking Ukraine, it's like two brothers. They are too close. But I think, so what happened is that because Russia will not attack NATO, because that will lead to world war. So instead of causing another world war, they decided to punish Ukraine and make Ukraine themselves refuse to go to NATO. So I see three faults here. Russia is an aggressor and a criminal, war criminal. Why are they aggressor and war criminals? Because the international treaty says of UNO that all international disputes must be resolved in peaceful manner. But they want to resolve it through war because they say peaceful talk didn't work. Okay. Secondly, the international treaty also says that no conflict should be resolved through military intervention in another man's country. So that also qualifies Russia to be the aggressor and war criminal. That's number 3. Number 4, you cannot go into another man's country with your own military without invitation. So they broke that. They took law into their own hand. So that makes Russia guilty. That's number 1. Number 2, I also see the guilt of NATO here, because the commitment, this war has started since that time, since NATO started extending or expanding to the east. So if that expansion to the east has stopped, and at least even when Ukraine was saying we want to come to NATO, we want NATO to come and we want to go into NATO, if NATO had shown maturity, and America and Western countries have shown maturity and said, okay, no, we don't want conflict, just remain neutral the way, because before Ukraine used to be neutral, this war would have been avoided. But when you listen to Western media, they will tell you, no, it doesn't matter what you do, it cannot be avoided because the man is just mad. No, it's not so easy like that. It's so surface to think, it's so artificial to think like that. But really, the real thing that gave Putin the argument to say they want to do attack is that you people don't want to stop extending to the east, we will stop you. That's what they're doing. So I see the guilt of Russia and Putin because they are the aggressors. I see the guilt of the West and NATO because they they were supposed to have said, to have used logical means, that because you remember in the 50s when Russia wanted to put their weapon in Cuba, it led to the Caribbean crisis. And when it almost led to Third World War II, when America would say they would never allow that to happen. Instead of that, they would go to war. So the same thing today. If you cannot tolerate, Russia putting weapon in Canada or in Mexico, why should you now be putting weapon and military equipment all around Russia? It will lead to one crisis or the other. So that's where I see the fault of NATO as well. But number three is the fault of my country, Ukraine. Ukraine used to be neutral, but unfortunately, in the last maybe 8 years, because of Russia took our Crimea, the one part of Russia of Ukraine, Ukraine decided to go to NATO, and they even put that in the constitution that we are no more neutral. We want to go to NATO. But if we have been forward thinking with foresight, our leaders would have seen that no, Russia will never allow this to lead to war. But everybody thought Russia cannot do anything. That is where I see the guilt and fault of Ukraine too. Because if Ukraine had exercised wisdom and said that no, give us guarantee, but we just say we want to go to NATO, and that is why we have all this problem we're having. So it could have been avoided on three levels: on the level of Russia by just obeying the international treaty, by resolving every conflict peaceful means. It could have been avoided by NATO by not entertaining and giving Ukraine hope, because NATO gave Ukraine hope that they will be able to, they will assist them, they will help them to join NATO. Number three, Ukraine shouldn't have even been pushing to go to that NATO in the first place. You would have had a different outcome than what we're having now. But you see, you are not hearing this narrative in a balanced manner like this. Even though, yes, I also am angry. I also am pained. I also am offended by what Russia has done. But I cannot lose my reasoning and my logic because of my pain. I cannot allow my tears to close my eyes. So I must be able to reason and see everything logically the way things are.
Thank you, sir. Very, very highly educational. That's just what we needed to hear from someone like you, giving us the real facts on the ground. Okay, so I'm going to be combining two questions. Two questions. Now, number one question, because this is meant to be an educational forum where all the things we have been reading left, right, and center, you at least give us the first-hand information and your opinion. Like we said, being a public figure, and you're someone that we can really, really hold your words. Now, the issue of Donbass and this separatists from Ukraine who Putin claims is trying to liberate. We want to know exactly what's happening there. Are there people that the Ukrainian government is holding against their will who wants to be in Russia? Because I learned that those separatists are being backed by Russia, and there is war in that area. And the first thing Putin said was that he wants to liberate those people. Then number two, at least I know there have been like 3 meetings that have been held, I don't know, in Belarus or somewhere, as President Putin giving any clear condition, 1, 2, 3 step, that this is what Ukraine needs to do to end this invasion. So that is our next 2 questions. And after this, Mr. Martins will ask the third question. Thank you, sir.
Oh, those very, very enlightening questions. Beautiful. I didn't even expect it, because when you listen to Western media too much, you will not even pay attention to what is happening in Donbass. You will think that Donbass is just an excuse that Putin has come up with, and that there is nothing really happening in Donbass. But you are right. Donbass is a secessionist group. Okay, it's like my country, our country, where I originally come from, Nigeria. In Nigeria, we have a secessionist group too, like we call them Biafra, especially the Biafra group. Biafra, they are not satisfied about some things in Nigeria, and they want to move out now. But they are not moving out. But those kind of group, like secessionist group, they are in every country. I don't think there is any country, at least most countries of the world, have some discontented groups that want to move away from the country. But most of the times, the reason why those groups are not successful is because there is no one strong power, superpower, that is backing them up. But in the case of Russia, I mean, in the case of the Donbass, they have Russia to back them up. So that is what complicated the whole thing. Yes, Ukraine is divided into two major groups. About 60-70% of the country is mainly Ukrainians. Yeah, they speak Ukrainian language and things. But about 30-40% are Ukrainians too by passport, but ethnically Russians. So, and most of them live in the Crimea region or Donbass region. And they want to speak Russian language. They want to do, they are closer to Russia. They want to go to Russia. And they voted. They had an election where they said they want to pull out Ukraine. But who is the country that want to allow anybody to pull out? Spain didn't allow the, what they call, Baus group, the Barcelona area, to pull away. Even here in Germany, here in Europe, if what do you call it? Bavaria would like to pull away from Germany, maybe, but they are not being allowed. Go to England, the Irish people would like to pull away. Nobody is allowing you to pull away like that. So everywhere you have people, even in America itself, Texas would like to pull away and become a country. Even in Canada, Quebec would like to pull away. No country will allow you to pull away. So the same thing with Ukraine. Ukraine doesn't want them to go. So, but the problem that Russia is having is that, okay, if you don't want them to go and build a compromise. So there was an agreement whereby presidents of France, of Russia, of Germany, and Ukraine came together and reached an agreement they call Minsk Agreement. But that Minsk Agreement, Ukraine signed it quite all right, that yes, we are going to do it. That we are going to give them autonomy, we are going to allow them to speak their own language, to have their own administration, but within Ukraine. And Russia agreed to that. But it has been maybe 5 or 6 years now that Ukraine couldn't do that, because any president that gives them that autonomy in Ukraine, he has lost his political future. It's too risky. It's just like saying now Nigeria, somebody will come in Nigeria and say, I just want to let Biafra go. Even if you do that, that's the end of his political something. Even if even people in the street can kill him, because everybody wants their country to remain the same. So, but now what triggered what Putin is saying is that Ukraine decided to now reintegrate that Donbass by force. So they started what they call anti-ATO, we call it in our own language, anti-terrorist military action. So we declare them as terrorists and decided to use military to bring them back. Then Russia empowered those people with weapons and formed an army for them. And they started fighting Ukraine. So Ukraine couldn't integrate them. But in the efforts of Ukraine trying to integrate that region, all about 15,000 people have died over the past 6, 7 years, 8 years. So Russia is saying, these people are dying. They are Russian-speaking people. You Ukrainians, you are not doing the agreement that was signed, and people are dying there, and the world is silent. So if the whole world is silent, we will not be silent, because they are our people. So Russia decided to recognize them as independent country, which is not also proper, because you cannot just recognize them on your own. Ukraine has to, Ukraine has to agree to that, because they are part of Ukraine. So, but Russia decided to unilaterally recognize them as independent countries, and then go in as if to protect them and get them out of Ukraine. So that is the situation with that Donbas region. Now, the second question you asked, what are the conditions that Russia has stipulated as the conditions for this war to stop? There are two difficult conditions for us, for Ukraine. Now, if you are a peace lover, you can say, okay, let's just have peace. Just sign any document, let's just have peace. But for politicians, they cannot do that, because if a politician agrees to all those conditions that Russia is asking Ukraine to agree to, his political career is also ended. For example, one of the conditions is this: Ukraine must officially agree to let Crimea go. That Crimea, which has been taken over by Russia in 2014, should now be recognized as Russian territory. Okay, no Ukraine president will ever do that. Number two, they should also officially, Ukraine should also let this other Russian-speaking region, Donbass, go and recognize that they are independent countries. That's number two. Also, no president in Ukraine will do that, because it's like suicide. It's been on a suicide mission. Number three, Ukraine must now agree never to allow NATO to come to their territory. Never allow NATO to come, and never join NATO, but become neutral. That one, at last, after the destruction and war has started, our president and our leadership eventually agreed that, okay, we don't want NATO again. Why couldn't you think of agreeing to that before the war started? But because of the destruction and war, at last we say, okay, now we don't want NATO again, because NATO themselves don't want us. So that is the only thing that Ukraine has agreed to. But also then the Russians also want Ukraine to recognize the Russian-speaking people of Ukraine and make Russian language the second language in the country. So some of those things, but those ones are still able to do, they are still possible. But the two ones to recognize those two breakaway regions, that is where our politicians, they are in a dilemma. They cannot do that.
Wow, what an enlightening section we've been having with Dr. Sunday Adelaja. Now, my question is, there been this prophetic angle to this whole event that is happening in Ukraine. Some people have said that this could trigger World War III. Do you see any possibility that this could lead to World War III?
I see more possibility of this leading to World War III than the possibility of this war start. If you had asked me 1 month ago, will Russia ever attack Ukraine? I would say it's never possible. It will never happen. So I didn't see that possibility. But the possibility of a third world war happening now that this one has started, I see it big. The possibility of third world war happening right now is not just 50-50. It's, in my own eyes, it's about 80% possibility. I see it as hanging over our head. The possibility of the third world war is hanging over our head right now. Why? Because Ukraine is constantly begging the West to come and help us win this war and fight this war. But the West has said we cannot come and fight because we don't want third world war. Okay, good. Then Ukraine is asking, give us fighter jets and give us our anti-aircraft equipment to be able to shut down Russian jets. And Russia has said any country that supplies those things, it will see them as mentally in the war, and it will attack them. And if Russia attacks any of those countries, like Poland wants to help, Slovakia wants to help, other countries want to help and send those military wires to Ukraine. And if Russia attacks them, it will trigger the fifth article of NATO's pact, which is that attack on one of those countries is attack on all NATO countries. That is third world war there. Russia also has countries that are supporting it. China, Arab countries and things like that, Iran and other ones. But even if it is Russia alone, it is already not just World War III, it is the end of the world. Because Russia has the capacity to shut down, to kill, to destroy the whole world through nuclear weapons. The weapons alone that Russia and United States have can destroy this world 1,000 times over. So the possibility of that happening is so high now. Any little mistake could lead to that. And we all have to not just pray, but we need to talk to our government that, God will, that they will be restrained, that they will be more restrictive, restrained than, just being careless and, talking anyhow and pushing. People should have to be, we have to try not to keep on provoking Russia any further.
Okay, my next question is, do you think there's any prophetic dimension to this event? Because here in Nigeria, Nigeria, people are so religious here, and there's been one or two prophecies about how this is going to lead. That's why I asked the first question: would this trigger World War III? And then there's been a series of prophecies about how this has a connection to events in the last days. Do you see, as a preacher and also a public figure, do you see any correlation with any scripture that has to do with the last days? Do you think that this should lead to this is a manifestation of what is predestined to be, or what will trigger certain events, chains of events that will eventually lead to certain biblical prophetic arrangement or so?
Okay,
Yes,
Dr. Sunday. Yes, so sorry, sir. So before you answer that question, because I would like the discussion to transcend Ukraine, the church, and then the future. So I'm happy that Pastor Martins has laid the foundation. So before we start, we move into the aspect of the church, the prophetic, and let us just take one more final question from this aspect. Even though you are free, sir, to still give us any information that you didn't fit, even while we talk. Then we are now going to move gradually into the aspect of the church, the prophetic angle, just like what Martins has said, and then the future. So the question I would like us to answer finally, before we now connect to what Martin said, is about the humanitarian situation on ground. Because once again, we hear all manner of things. They say people have fled to Poland, people have fled to Belarus. What exactly is the humanitarian situation? How bad is it? What exactly is happening? Because I know during war, there is a saying that truth is the first casualty of war. So we don't just want to sit down to listen to what people are saying everywhere. So that from the when you now finish talking about the humanitarian aspect, then we now move to the aspect of the church, the prophetic, and then we'll continue. Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, the humanitarian situation is catastrophic. In 1 week, 2 million people crossed over from Ukraine to Europe. Now they are going to 4 million people in 2 weeks of war. And I personally think that this could get to 15 million people. And 15 million people to hit the continent of Europe is like a tsunami. It's not going to be easy. 15, it could go to 10, 15, maybe even 20 million. That is like half of the whole population of Ukraine. It's very pathetic, but one has to commend a country like Poland, Germany, Romania, Moldova, Hungary. All these countries are really absorbing a lot of Ukrainians aid, but especially Poland. They are just doing incredibly very well, taking good care of the people over there. But the humanitarian situation is horrible. Now, to talk about the church dimension of it. Now, I am a pastor, yes, but I am not too much keen about what I hear. I hear American pastors, a lot of them are talking about Russia being the Gog and Magog. The Putin is the Gog, Russia is the Magog. They want to attack. That is the Bible. I've been hearing that since I was a small baby Christian. I've been hearing and reading about that. Every little event that was happen in the world, they want to connect it to Russia attacking Israel and bringing the world to the end. I don't believe in all that right now. I believe in being realistic. I think people are just becoming too religious, and everything is just connecting. I've had events that are being related to Russia and Gog and Magog, at least 5 different events that I can remember. When communism happened, they were saying it is Russian Gog and Magog. Nothing happened. When Russia started attacking Christians and putting them in jail, they said it is Gog and Magog, that the world was going to end. Nothing happened. Nothing ended. Then when Russia went to Afghanistan, they said that is it. The world will end now. It didn't end. When Israel attacked the Arab countries and Russia was supplying weapons to them, they said that's it. It is Gog and Magog. Russia now will make the world to come to an end. It will attack Israel. It never happened. When just any little thing that happened, when Gorbachev came, they say, yeah, that's the man, that's the something, Gog and Magog and the Michael, the prophet, the king that will lead to Israel being attacked, and the world will come. It's just fantasy. It's just fantasy. People, all those prophetic people, they're just, coming up with stories, narratives. I don't believe in that. I believe in realistic things and in reality. Maybe of course, God knows everything, and there's nothing that happens that God doesn't reveal to one person or the other. Like in this case now, I have a video on my YouTube channel and on Facebook, everywhere is there, where a man of God, a friend of mine from UK, Prophet Austin, when he came to our church, he really prophesied it. He saw it 2 times and said this war was coming. But it was difficult for us to believe. Even me, myself, I saw it in Revelation. I saw the soldiers, I saw everybody coming, taking over Kiev. But still, it was difficult for us to believe. Another man of God, Bobby Connell, also prophesied that this thing was going to happen. But we also find it difficult that it was going to happen. But it's happening. So God reveals things like that. That one I believe that they are real life something. But for some people to be coming with some stories from Old Testament and saying this is what that means, it's not always accurate.
Okay, there is a question from one of our participants. He's asking that we are hearing different versions on racial treatment on refugees. What is the truth about such news? We've seen video clips of Nigerians being restrained while uh, white people are being allowed a passage into trains and exit from Ukraine. Is such stories, are they true?
Yes, unfortunately, they are true. I cannot deny that. Ukrainians will tell you that it is just an exception and it is just, bad people, that in every country you have bad people, that it is just maybe one bad person or two bad people that do seem bad, but all of us are good. But, that's what everybody would like to say to protect their own reputation and their country. But I have lived in Ukraine for over 30 years myself, and I've fought racism. And I know that racism now is even better in Ukraine than it was before. Ukraine is one of the most nationalistic countries in the world. We have to face it. And Ukraine doesn't think too much, too high. People of Ukraine don't think too high of black people. Black people, yes, they are people, but you don't put them on the same category as yourself, as European. Even if any bad example that they want to make, it has to be Africa. Africa is seen as some people will even allow their dogs to pass and then an African. So that is it's just for you to have an idea of. But God in that same Ukraine helped me to build a church that is 99% white people. So God can also turn things around.
Okay, the next question would be that, okay, I can see more questions, but let me keep track of the question I want to ask you so I don't forget. The next question would be that as a public figure in Ukraine, I'm sure that uh, you have the audience of the president, the young president. If you were to advise him now, what should that advice be?
I had tried to advise not just him, but all the leadership in Ukraine before this situation escalated to where it is now. We, the leadership, the political leadership in Ukraine, should not have allowed this situation to get to this situation, I mean, to this stage. First of all, Ukraine could have done something to appease that Donbass region. If we had been able to find peace with Donbass region, they wouldn't have been talking about this, what we're talking about now. But Ukraine refused to sit on the table to talk with the rebels. They said, we'll never talk with rebels. Now the rebels are taking over the country. Same thing when we were about to lose the Crimea. I spoke with politicians, our Ukrainian politicians, that go and make peace with those people, go and talk to them, and let them know that they are not feeling, they shouldn't feel threatened in our country, that we are receiving acceptance to everybody. They were telling me we are the winners, we are going to crush them. But Russia came and supported them, we couldn't crush them. Now we are being crushed. So it's a lot of lesson that could be learned in this situation from the Ukrainian side. So right now, the advice that I would give our president, he will not do it. Because if he does it, the nationalistic people, the Ukrainian people themselves will kill him. Because Ukrainian people don't believe in compromise. They believe in winning. And it's part of the national pride. The national pride will not allow them to do what I would tell them to do.
All right,
Okay, sorry.
questions.
Okay, yes, we still have some issues here because we have some strategic questions we want to ask you.
We can't
We
see
also,
you again, though.
oh, sorry. Apologies. I think it was my control. Okay, good. So, sir, I listened to, I think, a video you did yesterday. It was actually very touching, and you gave a kind of timeline of challenges you had leaving Ukraine due to some one or two issues, and how you used the word God made them to spew to spew you out and give you the freedom to actually go, at least to move after some years. And we actually acknowledge that pastoring, living in such a country, it's because the grace of God upon you, the strength, the tenaciousness. I mean, not everybody can survive it. I know some people will have said this is like this is more than a wilderness experience. This is not where God, but God gave you the heart of a lion to be able to conquer that place, and we know that God still has a lot of plans for you. So I think one major question on the mind of everyone is that what is the state of the church, in Ukraine? I won't use the word your church because by God's special grace, you have the largest congregation there, and it is the direction you go that the Christians in Ukraine are going. Anybody that likes it, that is just the truth. I saw some pictures you posted, some of your members helping people, serving food. But generally, what's their state of mind? Are you in contact? Do you guys have a virtual meeting? Yes, as believers, this is one of the reasons why we're holding this meeting. We want to know what is happening to the church, the members, how, and just things around that issue. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Number one thing that is happening is that the Christians are gathering together every day. Even sometimes I share the meetings on the Zoom meeting they have, because not everybody can have internet now, or not all of them have electricity too. But those ones who could come online, my wife, who is the pastor of the Central Church now, they always come online every day to pray. At least they pray 3 hours every day on Zoom, and it's live broadcast. So sometimes I share that on my page also. Every day they are doing it. So the church is meeting every day. Before it was not every day, but now it's every day. That's number one. Number two, A lot of church members have also left, but I believe that they left with the purpose of God. I'm sure that wherever God will take them, God will use them also for his purpose. And there is a reason why God has allowed that to happen. So, and like I said, close to 4 million people have left Ukraine, and a lot of our members are included. And I'm sure God is going to use them for it, but there's a reason for that. I had a revelation about that too. So, but then there are a lot of members who are left behind. Those ones who you saw that are feeding the poor, that are helping the vulnerable and things, there are some of them. So, everybody is behaving and following the leading of God for them. Some of them are back in Ukraine, some of them are out of Ukraine. That whatever they feel that God is allowing them to do is what they do. But the church is alive. The church is not a building. The church is not even in a territory. The church is the body of Christ. So Christians, they carry the church inside. They themselves are the church. Either they are there or outside. The church of God is living in all circumstances.
Sorry. That's very good to hear because I personally have also been wondering the state of mind of people in the fellowship in Ukraine. And like you said, based on the refugee situations, it will have been so bad. But I'm happy like you've now comforted us that at least quite a number of people are still behind and they are moving on. So this also takes us to another question of now the future. So, sir, what do you see? Because there are a lot of speculations. Some people say this might be well, I don't want to use the word the end, but eventually maybe Russia will take over Ukraine. So, what do you see as the future in Ukraine? And yes, what do you see as the future in Ukraine? And before we also ask your own plan, the plans you can tell us. I know there are some that you are working on the ground, but the ones you can tell us because we are concerned to know what is it's in the future. And then after that, Mr. Martins will say ask some questions. Then we are going to check for other relevant questions from the audience. And then because we don't also want to keep you waiting for long, we know it's not easy. And then from there we start winding down. Thank you, sir.
What do I see as the future of Europe? I mean, of Ukraine? Huh, that's a very difficult question because the future that I would like to see is that Ukraine should win this war. If Ukraine wins this war, uh, the country will move forward. I think the country will move and will be accepted in European Union and will become part of Europe, but not part of NATO. And then the whole world will come and help Ukraine rebuild the country back. And the country will be prosper and move forward and become a testimony to the world. That's in case of our victory. But even uh, but if we lose the war, if Ukraine loses this war, Ukraine will never be the same again. That means Russia, there are two possibilities. Russia might divide Ukraine into two. Take the left side of Ukraine, the one half of Ukraine, which is more Russian speaking Ukraine, and either make them to join Russia or make it to be an independent country like just those breakaway regions and make them into smaller countries that are pro-Russia or just put all of them under Russia. That is one. Then the second, the western part of Ukraine, probably Russia would like to make them to be Ukraine and take Kiev as their own side of Ukraine, take the capital of Kiev that we have now, and then move the other Ukraine to Lviv. So they might break up Ukraine into two. That is if Russia wins. Or we don't know what's in the mind of Putin. Maybe he will even take over the whole country and make them and put a figurehead president that will become like a puppet in the hand of Russia that will be doing their biddings. Now, concerning my own future, God has made it clear to me since 2016 that He wants me to go to Nigeria. And that's why I started the mission, the online broadcast that I started to do to talk about the ills and evil things that I see in the body of Christ in Nigeria. Because I know that my future is in Africa, in Nigeria, but I don't want to go there to do a church, to pastor a church. I've already done that. I have nothing to prove. What I want to go to do in Africa is to help to facilitate national transformation and help elevate poverty and just stop the suffering of my people. Uh, but before then, right now, because of all this war and what has happened, I need to get myself back on my feet first before I move over to Nigeria eventually.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Sunday. We are so blessed by this interview, and most of our audience out there have been commending these balanced views that you've shared on the war, because we are hooked up to BBC, Fox News, CNN, and the rest of the Western media platforms, and they've been given the impression that the Ukrainian forces may be very successful in withstanding the Russian troops. But from what we are seeing with the damages from footages on Ukraine, we know that the war is raging on. Now, with respect to your plans for the church, I heard you say that God told you about Africa and the rest of that coming to Africa. Specifically, is it Nigeria? Because Nigerians want to know if you are coming home to them, and they will be imagining or wondering what concept of ministry are you coming to start a a congregational church system where you are Sunday pastor or weekly pastor, or you are bringing a revolution to the Nigerian church system, which you have already started uh, kind of introducing from your short video clips and some of your commentaries.
Well, I think you
Yes,
already answered that
definitely.
question. Yes, he said he wants
Yes.
to facilitate national transformation. I love that word. I love that word, and I think, sir, you need to throw more light on it when you talk about facilitating national transformation. And you said you are not doing it based on the traditional church Sunday. So please, I were interested in having more details because that's very important for us.
Okay. What I plan to do is to come to Nigeria, not to start a church. So I will not be having traditional church Sunday service. I don't want to start a church, but I want to help bring revolution to the church, to politics, to the life of the youth, to all the seven spheres and seven mountains of life. I want to help bring transformation, national transformation, revolution to every aspect of the political life in Nigeria. And it doesn't have to be about church included, but I will not be starting a church. I will be helping to bring about new concept of church, of how church should be done. By teaching and talking about it. Then also, I want to be able to help raise up revolutionaries that will be able to lead and take responsibility for the nation politically, economically, technologically, scientifically, and in every area and aspect of life.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Sunday Adelaja, and then also our audience. Thank you for participating in this discussion. And I'm sure Wikiman, you may have one or two remarks to make before we call it a day.
Yes, it's just a vote of thanks to Dr. Sunday. We really appreciate you taking your time to be here. And even though it's a difficult time, challenging time, you still made it to come and educate us properly. Even me myself, Mr. Martins knows me. I'm a very voracious when it comes to information. But honestly, the information you gave is very, very reliable. It is very balanced. I clearly was also able to see where some bias was coming from some of these media houses that was just trying to buy over the argument, just to buy some people to their side and not giving objectivity. So we appreciate you. We still hope to have this time because we know that this situation will still metamorphose, not necessarily into something bad. We are hoping that peace will come. But even as the situation is moving, and as I know, just like recently, I was listening to, and that even if for any reason, like this NATO issue, then there is this talk of countries like Poland, are they not also NATO? And they're also close to Russia. So this is making a lot of people to see, just like what you said, sir, that this is beyond Ukraine. Okay, Poland is NATO, and Poland is just at the tail end of. So if you now say that, okay, the West should not move, should not survey Russia through Ukraine. What if the West decide to use their NATO allies in that eastern region? So I'm just trying to say that this situation is not, it has not finished. Hence, there will still be time, opportunities for further engagement. I also want to know that a lot of response we are getting here very, very positive. People are really, really happy. Joseph is saying, God bless you, sir. Peter is saying, God bless you, sir. Someone said, I love every aspect of this interview. It's very, very positive, and we thank you for coming. And we hope, we pray for your family, for your children, for the church in Ukraine, and for your future plans. We know that this is going to be a kind of springboard, to shoot you into the next level that God has for you. Okay, Martins, I think I'm done.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Sunday Adelaja. And also, thank you, our audience. Our prayers are always for you, Dr. Sunday Adelaja. We're praying for you and your family because we know of your immense contribution to the nation of Ukraine and how you have inspired a lot of us all around the world. I still could remember how I read Church Shift, and lots of things shifted about my theology, and then everything about my understanding of church changed because I read Church Shift. It's a great thing you have done for the body of Christ. God has used it to do for the body of Christ, and lots of ministers in Africa. I know lots of ministers in Africa who picked up that book and they were inspired. In fact, one of the greatest motivation for me when I read that book was the Orange Revolution. When it got to that point, I said, this is what we need in Nigeria, a church that will be very supportive to a system that will uproot corruption and then establish the wishes and aspirations of the people. That is exactly what we need in our country. And with Church Shift, you have been able to establish a new order and pattern that we could adopt to bring positive revolution to our society. So, Dr. Sunday Adelaja, you've really been an immense help to lots of people. I don't want you to forget that. And also, we are praying for you, your family, and also your future plans, what you may have as you have incubated in your thoughts, or what God has communicated to you that should be your next phase of life. We are praying that everything will unfold as each day comes and go. We are really grateful for the time you have to share with us on this discussion today. So many of our people out there who participated have been inspired, have been blessed. The commentary, the responses have been that, wow, this is a good perspective to this world, because all they've been hearing are junks from the media, and sentiment and emotions have been introduced to media reportage on this war. So people now have a balanced view, and then I believe that will show in different commentaries online too. Thank you so much, Dr. Sunday. Our best regards to your family.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.